Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Kristen Smith, Pennsylvania editor for the Center Square, and joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter, Anthony Hennon. It was a big week in Harrisburg. The governor unveiled his second budget proposal to the General Assembly, this time in a very new venue, the Capitol Rotunda, which many may be familiar with from their second grade field trips, but it's the first time that a governor has ever presented his spending plan outside of the House chamber. And this one, in addition to being in a fun new place, had a lot of spending in it that made some Republicans' eyes pop. So, Anthony, why don't you take us through some of the high-level spending priorities that Shapiro has outlined here?
Yeah, so we're looking at, I believe it's about a 7% proposed increase in spending, which would take us to about, $48.5 billion, I think, as far as the budget goes. You know, some of the biggest things here is another significant boost to K through 12 education. He called for about $1.1 billion in new funding, basically making sure that not only does no school district get less money this coming year than they did previously, basically it holds steady funding, but he's also looking to increase $50 million for special education, $30 million for pre-K programs to recruit and retain teachers, money for student mental health, and as well a $1.5 billion fund to invest in building improvements and upgrades, with $300 million to hit this year, and then the rest following over the next, I believe, 5 years was a discussion. He's also talking for higher education, a $280 million boost for the Pennsylvania state system of higher education, holding tuition level for low-income students at $1,000 per semester. He proposed a $500 million bond for site development, basically to bring in companies and attract them with basically shovel-ready sites to build up. We're also talking a $1.5 billion proposal over 5 years for public transit, which would go to SEPTA in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh Regional Transit, transit up in Lehigh and Northampton counties. You know, so we're talking a fairly significant increase in education and a few other issues, but it seems like education was really the one that he was leading here with, as well as a statewide economic development plan.
It's not unusual for the opposing party to have all kinds of problems with the governor's proposal. In this particular case, Republicans have a lot of problems with it. So why don't you start with the biggest issue that they have with his plan?
Yeah, at root here, it's the funding. It's concerns long-term about the deficit Pennsylvania faces, and they also don't like the idea of pulling money from the state's rainy day fund. Senate President pro tempore Kim Ward called it a budget of unicorns and rainbows. She further added, just a little bit for everybody in this budget without telling us how you're going to pay for it. So, you know, Republicans, perhaps unsurprisingly, are skeptical of the education proposal, skeptical of whether we can actually find the money to pay for this, and also skeptical simply because from last budget season, you know, they had high hopes of getting some more funding for the Lifeline scholarships, which would boost school choice, and that, of course, did not come to fruition. So I think, you know, this round of budget season, budget debate, we're going to see a lot more skepticism from Republicans and really hammering on this notion of we don't actually have the money available at hand.
And a tease to future coverage from Anthony. What are some of the issues that Shapiro didn't talk about?
Yeah, so, you know, if you go back and you listen to or read the budget address, there wasn't a lot of attention on energy issues. You know, perhaps this is a result of, pending lawsuits about keeping the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative alive and enforced in Pennsylvania, or to come to enforcement in Pennsylvania. At no point did he actually talk about the opioid crisis and how to deal with addiction or where he expects money to go to on that. You know, there's a few blanks here, which, given how long the speech was, it's no surprise because you can only keep legislators in their seat for maybe an hour 30, hour 45 before they really get itchy. But, you know, there's a few. Another thing, housing was only lightly touched on. He talked about increasing the fund for whole home repairs, which basically helps people fix up homes and avoid them becoming vacant or blighted. You know, but there's a lot of room still left in this budget to debate, and a lot of things that didn't necessarily get the amount of attention you might expect given the impact in Pennsylvania.
Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Anthony Hennon, I'm Kristen Smith. Please subscribe and thank you for listening.
Get creative with Skillshare. Explore thousands of hands-on creative classes with one inspiring membership. Watch, play, learn, discover. Follow the link in our show description to join Skillshare today and get 1 month free.